I'm not sure if it's the sign of a good writer or a bad writer that I remember the commercial, but not what it's for. And at the same time, I was going to name this series Why We Tell Advertising Stories, but I think we all know the why in that case. And welcome back to the heart of the stories we tell. I'm Rob the host, and this is another look deep into what makes a story, a theory on storytelling by a storyteller who believes that every story has merit. And tonight's episode is Stories That Advertise. Specifically, I was looking at a Kickstarter that I probably shouldn't be backing, but am, and looking at the fact that they have this little story to tell. And they don't need to. Most Kickstarters don't. Anyway, if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button to hear all my inane theories about why and how we tell stories. There's a lot to unpack when it comes to advertising and commercials in general, so let's get started. Like I said at the beginning, some things you just remember the story of the commercial without remembering what they're actually advertising. Hell, sometimes I watch a commercial and I'm like, what was that for again? To be fair, you don't have a lot of time with a commercial. You have to instantly get the product recognized, you need to get what's going on, and not all of these are going to be commercials. Like I said, that Kickstarter is going to be important. But there's lots of ways to advertise. So let's take a look at one from my childhood.
Yes, we know it's a big fluffy
Talk
bun.
to the manager.
It is the manager.
Where's the beef?
He's putting us under the supervisor.
If you ask me, which you didn't, we should call the owner.
At Wendy's, the hamburger we modestly call a single has more beef than the Big Mac or Whopper.
We've got the owner.
Hello? Where's the beef?
Wendy's kind of people never ask, where's the beef?
I don't think there's anybody there. I really don't.
If, like me, you were alive in the 80s, you really remember Where's the Beef. But you probably also remember ATM, and you probably also remember the San Francisco Treat, because these things just stuck with you, because they just were that awesome. You remember them, even years later, and you probably can even place what product they were for. And that's really saying something, because again, I had to look up that this was a Geico commercial. On the other hand, I say it all the time, that's not how any of this works. And like I said, there's lots of ways to advertise. We do it in the middle of movies, we do it in books. Hell, in the 80s, almost every cartoon we had was to sell toys. I know, what a shocker. Transformers wasn't written for the love of storytelling, it was written to sell you toys. But even nowadays, that's true. In fact, as much as I could go through 100 different shows from the past that were really just 30-minute long commercials for buy our toys, at the end of the day, Cartoon Network cancels shows. In fact, it did cancel Young Justice entirely because the toy lines weren't selling. Warner Brothers and DC Comics has started a project where they're going to have their own streaming service and is going to put Young Justice Season 3 on there, which is really cool because that's a good series. But this show got ratings. It had fans. The problem was it had the wrong type of fans. See, Cartoon Network lives and dies by adding on to things. You don't make a superhero show just to make a superhero show. You make a superhero show to sell toys. And, well, that's a little sad of a comment on the way we tell stories sometimes. But just because we're trying to sell something doesn't mean we can't write a good story. Let's remember, writers are in business. They are trying to get you to sell and buy something all the time. A ticket to the movie, a subscription to the cable service, a subscription to whatever streaming service it is. They want you to buy these things. And that's okay, because that's how us as writers get paid. That's how we live. After all, you can't tell your landlord, yeah, well, everyone loves my story that I didn't get paid for. That's good enough for my rent this month, right? But just because it's a job doesn't mean that it's something that we can't really spend some time making and working well. Being for money doesn't mean that it's bad. Everyone on this channel knows that I love G.I. Joe, but look at this.
She's been kidnapped by Cobra. We have no alternative. Call in G.I. Joe.
Fight for freedom wherever there's trouble. G.I. Joe is there. He never gives up. He'll stay till the fight's won. G.I.
Who's leader of the Joe team? Hawk.
He's America's best. He's in control. He's the man.
Good luck, Joe.
He loses his day
legend of G.I. Joe, new from Marvel Comics.
Selling comics and toys is pretty much what G.I. Joe was made for. In fact, the toys came before any of the story. The story was written specifically to sell the toys. Which brings us back to our Kickstarter. Reaper makes little statues, little action figure type things, that are meant to go with role-playing games. The idea is you use them to represent your character and stand in. They come unpainted and you paint them to specialize them yourself. They used to be made of pewter and different types of metal, and then they came up with this new material, bones. A fancy name for a rubber PVC material that they use to make cheaper and longer-lasting figures that are a little more posable. And they decided to kickstart moving as many of their material over to it. And they did so with Mr. Bones. Well, he was digging up dem bones, and then he made it into the vaults, and under the vaults, and into all sorts of things. That first Kickstarter took off in a way no one could have expected. Now, am I going to say that it's because they had the story about this guy digging up bones? No, not in the longest shot. But I will say that it didn't hurt, and the fact that they kept people entertained and brought to this, specifically in such a way that they were able to keep us engaged. Now, the comment section there was awesome, and actually, just on a personal level, is what introduced me to the idea of the story MOOC that I've talked about on this channel before, and what got me to finally go and do a NaNoWriMo. So as a writer, that story impacted me. If not for the awesome people in that comment section of that Kickstarter, this channel might not even be a reality. Because again, that story MOOC and NaNoWriMo really pushed me over the edge into wanting to learn why it is we tell stories and how we tell stories. And about a year later, they did it again. See, Bones 1 was such a success that they decided to do Bones 2. And for Bones 2, they decided to do kinda like a board game thing. It was kinda cool. They walked around and it was near Halloween, so they had him trick-or-treating. But again, it was still just a basic, here's the story. Once that one blew everything away, though, they did pay a little more attention to the story. Because for Bones 3, it was a video game, and for Bones 3, it was a new character walking around. Mrs. Bones. That's right. I'd like you to meet his wife, Mrs. Bones. She looks a little anorexic there. I hope that she didn't starve herself for that photo shoot. Each of these were huge commercial successes, and they didn't need to tell more stories. They could literally just throw up those bones and say, hey, you loved us before, you're going to love us now. But now, as they started number 4, they went even more story, because now it's Mr. Bones' totally epic adventure, and they have this whole little story where he's invited his friends over to a role-playing game. Now, I'm not saying that they're George Martin, Stephen King, or Brad Metzler writing an epic, awesome story. I'm saying that they realize that as part of their sales pitch, they want to be entertaining, and part of their entertaining is these little comic strips that are just little one-off jokes and ideas, but they're part of how they're selling. Why? Because they know deep down stories are how they touch us. Then again, Mr. Martin collects miniatures too. So maybe, if he wasn't so busy writing The Winds of Winter, where are my Winds of Winter, George? Then he would also write for something like this. In fact, he used to write for commercials all the time. But it's a different thought process. You need to put your product front and center, you need to explain what you're doing, but at the same time, you still need to keep your story interesting. So next time someone asks you where the ATM, or what the San Francisco treat is, or even just where's the beef, remember these are types of stories too. But there's a different type of advertising that I want to touch on too, and that's product placement. Specifically, inside a movie or TV show, when they show the character using a product. I'm sure everyone can remember that time that everyone was using the MacBooks on that movie or TV show, or the time that someone turned the can of soda right perfectly for you to be able to read it, or the time that they opened up the bag of chips and you could easily read what it was. All of those are paid advertisements too. But does it matter? Well, I guess it depends on whether or not it actually hurts the story. If not, I'm normally pretty blasé to it. Now I'm interested in your opinion. Does it make a story more realistic if they're drinking a can of Coke instead of a can of generic soda? Does it make it feel more real if the story takes place going to the Pizza Hut? I don't know about you, but sometimes these things make things grounded in reality. Stephen King made a whole line of stories that are full of pop culture references like that. Also, was there a commercial that you think I should have talked about here? One that had a really funny story, something that just stuck in your head and you remembered it? Let me know about that down in the comments as well. But first, let me throw you up a commercial of my own. One that if you've been here on this channel, you've seen over and over again, because I believe in it, because I would like to help the Nikon Charity Anthology get all the way up to make money so that they can give it to this charity. Now, there's also a little bit of mercenary within me here. Several of the people who are in this book are friends of mine from Nikon, and as such, I mean, I guess there was a little bit there that I want to help, but the Jimmy Fund's a very good charity to consider, so I hope that you take that into account when you look at this. And for those of you that are wondering what these bones look like painted, these are my painted versions. Well, some of them. I have others. I'm not exactly a professional painter. In fact, I'm going to use this as an excuse to show off another bit of advertising. Specifically, my friend Kurt, you might remember him from being the author of this book, and we might have a project coming out together eventually, has his own thing on Facebook called Aries Studios, and they paint miniatures for people. So, if you're interested in looking at bones but don't think you're a good painter, even if you are probably a ton better than this for me, you could totally go to Aries Gaming Studio on Facebook and he will paint them for you. I will leave a link to both Aries Gaming and the Kickstarter in the description below. And a big thanks to everyone over at Reaper for taking all of my money. Alright, so, we've reached that part of the video where I have to ask you to like and share this video if you enjoyed it. It really helps the channel out. Plus, I'm trying to build a community here. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and hit the little bell to enable alerts. Because every week I tell a new version of what I think about storytelling and ramble on with some crazy ideas. And every Thursday I do a Throwback Thursday where I talk about an older story. I try to review TV shows and movies as recent as I can, all in an attempt to figure out why we tell stories, how we tell stories, and just get a little deeper into the heart of the stories we tell. I hope you have a good night, and thanks for watching.